Well, what's up again there, guys? Brian, the 3 Topics Gamer, here to share with you another one of my awesome top 5 list videos to share with you guys today. Now, this video idea was actually sent to me by a regular viewer of mine going by the name of Revelation Turtle. And since he obviously knows how much of a big fan of Yu-Gi-Oh I am, I'm sure he wants to know what just so happens to be some of my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh video games of all time. So, without wasting any more time, since I have to admit it has been quite a long time since I've ever actually had a chance to duel someone in person, since you can't really seem to find anyone in all of Las Vegas to duel against who actually likes the old rules, since the new rules have pretty much made the game virtually unplayable, but that's beside the point. But that doesn't mean that I can't go back and enjoy some of the classic titles that I think make Yu-Gi-Oh a very, very interesting game and still to this day my favorite card game of all time. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the list, and we'll be starting off with the number 5 ranked Yu-Gi-Oh game of all time on my list, which is a little bit strange because it's not necessarily a card game but a spin-off, and that spin-off just so happens to be number 5 is strangely going to go to 2003's Yu-Gi-Oh! Dungeon Dice Monsters for the Game Boy Advance. Now, for those of you that don't know, or even more so don't remember, Dungeon Dice Monsters was a spin-off of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game that never really took off, and the show only dedicated about 3 episodes to this game. Now, despite having never had a very long lifespan, what really stands out to me is that when you can take a card game and change it up a bit to the point where it still retains its initial concept. The primary premise of the game is that you will roll a set of dice, and if you manage to match 2 of them, that allows you to summon a specific monster in a specific area of your side of the board. Once that monster is on board, you then connect monster to monster in order to reach your opponent's heart points. And that's really how you end up winning the game. Once you're on the board and you've connected all of your monsters, you create a path and then attack your opponent's heart points. And if you manage to destroy all 3 of them, then you win the game. Now, I know from what I have just said that there's really not much to this game, and I can agree with you on that. And it does seem somewhat limiting. But having so many different monsters that I'm familiar with and having so many different effects and stats can certainly be enough to at least give this game a try to older fans of the franchise that might have missed this game. Number 4 on my list has to go to 2003's Yu-Gi-Oh! The Sacred Card for Game Boy Advance. Now, this game's plot takes place during my personal favorite era of Yu-Gi-Oh!, which was during the Battle City tournament, and it allows you to take control of a character and basically play through the events of the show. Now, you will encounter many familiar characters from the show and even duel them, essentially giving you the experience of what it would have been like had you been part of the Battle City tournament. Now, unlike Dungeon Dice Monsters, the gameplay actually allows you to walk from specific areas and actually talk to NPCs, thereby giving you a somewhat adventure feel to the game. And when it actually comes to the dueling itself, while there's certainly some elements that are familiar with the actual card game and how it is played, they did manage to add a couple of modifications to create Sacred Card its own identity to make it stand apart. Primarily, the addition of the elemental system, meaning that certain attribute monsters can automatically destroy other specific monsters, which might upset some Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game purists, but it really wasn't something that bothered me too much. However, this title is far from something that I would openly recommend to non-fans, and if you are really interested in this particular era of Yu-Gi-Oh!, then you are just better off watching the entire specific storyline on Netflix. Number 3 on my list has to go to the very interesting Yu-Gi-Oh! The Duels of the Roses, which was released exclusively on the PlayStation 2 in the US in 2003 and went on to sell over 1 million copies, making it a greatest hits for the console. Now, the story for the game I find most interesting out of any Yu-Gi-Oh! Game, as it is loosely based off of the actual 15th century War of the Roses, which was fought between the houses of Lancaster and York. Now, you play as a duelist that is summoned from another time in order to tip the scale in one of the house's favor, and what's more is you can actually choose which side you want to fight on. You can either follow history and join the Lancasters, or perhaps you might want to change history and fight for the York. Though there aren't many cutscenes throughout the game, it does, however, mention a number of key moments that actually did happen during this historic conflict. Now, the actual gameplay is a bit complicated to explain for a short and topless video like this one, but the simplest way that I can explain it is that this game is pretty much Dungeon Dice Monsters, but instead of using dice and heart points, you're using cards and life points. Some of the rules are similar to the actual game, but there certainly are a number of additions, like having a deck leader, maneuvering your cards all over the board, and taking advantage of the field power bonuses. The soundtrack to this game is by far the best out of any game in this series, and it really adds to each specific situation in Duel that you will be part of. This game also benefits from using actual 3D models when the monsters fight each other, which is really cool to watch. And even to this day, this is something that I love to pull out and play on my PlayStation 2 from time to time. Number 2 on this list has to go to perhaps my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh game that does not follow the traditional style in which the actual game is played, and that is 2004's Yu-Gi-Oh! Capsule Monsters Coliseum, exclusively for the PlayStation 2. Now, Capsule Monsters Coliseum can be summed up to a single line. All this game is Yu-Gi-Oh! Chess. Now, I really like the game of chess, but if you don't, then I don't think that this is a game that you should go out of your way to try out. Now, the game's primary campaign has you take the role of Yami and Yugi as they join a new tournament in an attempt to claim the title of Capsule Monsters Champion. Now, this game takes elements from both Dungeon Dice Monsters and Duels of Roses in the sense that you will actually not be using cards, but game pieces. And also, each and every single duels that you encounter plays on a very different and unique board, and you must be constantly adapting your tactics for both your opponent's monsters and the elements of the board itself. Now, two really cool additions to this game is that each unique piece can actually level up over time to make them stronger. Some can level up so much that they can actually learn special abilities and special attacks, and even some of them can even evolve into becoming much stronger capsule monsters. Now, I may be wrong about this fact, but as far as I know, this may be the only Yu-Gi-Oh game that actually uses the voice actors from the actual show. This gives the game a level of quality that no other Yu-Gi-Oh game has, and throughout the duel, the characters are actually talking to each other and reacting to whether or not the duel is playing out in or against their favor. You can also play this with a friend, but sadly it is offline only, which for me was never too much of an issue, but I know that for others that will be a real drawback. Number 1 and the best Yu-Gi-Oh video game ever made is actually one of the more recent ones, and that is Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelists, which was released back in 2015. Now, the main reason why this game is the best is for one simple reason. It actually plays by the rules of the actual game. Now, not only does it do this, but it actually covers all of the rules of most of the generations of dueling that came out for Yu-Gi-Oh! Over its franchise. Spots 5 to 2 covered only the original series, but Legacy of the Duelists spans from Gen 1 all the way to Arc 5. Though there is no official campaign for this game, it does allow you to play through nearly every significant duel that ever took place over the entire franchise. There are over 100 duelists that you can play against, and once you have defeated them in the story modes, you can then take them on in their challenge mode and face them at their hardest difficulty. Now, once you have defeated all of the computer duels, you can then take your skills online and challenge other players for even more duel action. The amount of cards that this game has is bigger than any game before, and what makes Legacy of Duels serve as a wonderful duel simulator is it can actually teach you how to use specific cards the right way, and knowing this knowledge and knowing exactly how to use specific cards is a great learning tool. That way you can actually take the skills that you learned from this game and apply them to your real decks and use those strategies against actual opponents in the real world, and there really is no other Yu-Gi-Oh game that provides this much for the fans to use. So, in regards of that, that is why I consider Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duels the number 1 game and the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Game ever made. And that concludes my ranking of my top 5 favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Video games of all time. So, now that you guys know my list, if any of you are actual Yu-Gi-Oh! Fans of the card game and you actually like the video games, I'd like to know what are some of your favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Video games of all time. Share your list with me and everyone else in the comments down below. And if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to press that subscribe button so you can keep track of me and all my future video game products. Daily video projects. And also, don't forget to press one of the links in the description down below so you can either follow me on Twitter or follow me on Instagram, or heck, you can even support me on Patreon. And if you become a Patreon, you can actually guarantee that your video ideas make it on the channel. So, like always, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I will see you next time.